I'm just taking an example. Let's say earlier you were bullied. If you go to your teachers thinking they'll give you justice and all of that, you're just dismissed. But the moment you're trying to improve, you see that those same teachers just pound at you vehemently that why you're trying to improve. And if the dynamics change, if you also start asserting your own power in a weird way, then you see how the teacher would then have this weird sense of morality that he would want to enforce upon you. So these sorts of weird realities exist. But yo guys, namaskaram. So one of you had commented that make videos on schooling system and the government job system. So I thought let us just work at it. I'll make two separate videos. The first is the matrix of schooling system. So school is often described or defended as a necessary evil. You might have heard it all across the internet. Without it, a lot of people say that society would collapse, but is it really the case? It raises a much deeper question in my understanding, that is, that for whom is it necessary and for what outcome? Is it used as a tool to control and make you an obedient slave of the system? Is it aimed to make your exploiters more powerful and you just keep on working for them for your entire life? These are, I think, some questions that we need to understand. So first of all, let's just understand that the entire schooling system that we have right now, obedience is the core feature of it. Modern schooling systems, at least in our country, are extremely good at producing, let's say, a sort of weird rule following, a sort of weird compliance, which has no practical applicants in the real world. What these children later end up struggling with is independent thinking, because whatever the authority has told them, they'll just walk that path without even questioning for their own selves. Students are rewarded not for understanding reality but for reproducing or vomiting the textbook answers. So over time, this conditions your brain, or let's say people, to trust instructions more than their own perception because it's coming from the so-called authority. And specifically in our country, where there's a low trust system in general, a scripted morality is often seen as this virtue sort of thing. So in low trust environments, following rules blindly does not protect you. It just exposes you. It exposes your weakness, your cowardice. I'm not saying that go and break all rules, but just to understand the contextual reality, because generations are trained over a span of 10 to 20 years and then they are unable to question that what went wrong in the way. And suddenly at 30, 35, midlife crisis hit and those sorts of things. But anyhow, you might have seen that those who rise fastest are often not the most ethical or hardworking one in reality. But those who understand power, real incentives, maybe act decisively and sometimes act in a corrupt way. Meanwhile, these obedient individuals who have always worked hard in school and all other places are fed the standard scripts that be patient, your time will come, your turn will come, karma exists, bad people would be punished in so called XYZ heaven and hell and whatnot. So you see, the entire school prepares you to believe these scripts even when you see clearly that your reality contradicts them. So I've had certain clients, poverty shaped their childhood and now it just drives their decision. So when they were poor, the way society treated them was quite different as to now, but still they carry those traumas and scars within them. With your own eyes, you can see that reality just treats different people differently based on their power, on their usefulness, and things like that. But schools have this weird system of killing creativity of each and every individual. And then we go on complaining that we produce the least happy and least creative people in the entire world. But anyhow, I think one of the core reasons is you see this tool of fear, which is used as this training sort of metric. The most developmental years from a psychological perspective for a lot of children are spent under constant evaluation from an idiot, fear of punishment over very petty and minor issues. Your belt is not right, your nails are so big, your hair is so big, and all of that. And public comparison is often used to instill a sense of shame within you. In the real world, mistakes are data points to learn from, but school teaches you that mistakes should be treated as this failure sort of person. These are not real time feedback, and then a lot of people just fear making mistakes. You see its implications. Let's say when a person goes on to work, be it the corporate sector, be it the government sector, a minor mistake is just blown out of proportion to publicly humiliate the person. Of course, bullies exist. So the school has a way wherein our primitive tendencies are at outward display. As adults, we learn to hide those tendencies, but when you go into workplaces, the same dynamics start replaying, which happens in your school because you are, let's say, too naive to understand reality or learn reality. You still go with that script, that, let's say, NPC script, that whatever the authority would tell me, whatever the rules would tell me, those are like codes of truth and things like that. But eventually, the authority figures just move on with time in life, and your fear becomes internal. A lot of people still carry it in their adulthoods where they are just hesitant to walk their own path in a different way. They're always seeking approval from the authority and they fear standing out. And see, all the damage that has been done to you, you're still paying for it quietly. It's not fair, but that's how it is. Because we just want to create a sort of system wherein we have this weird sense of control over people to just kill their individuality in a weird way. And then this brings me to my next point, that you see this fake sense of outer discipline without any internal self discipline. It's just enforced upon you to just show to the public that how of a good school they are. From a rating perspective, how on top they can come. A lot of schools in our country claim to teach discipline, but look closely at how it's applied. If we were genuinely teaching discipline, why there is so much filth around on the streets, and how we are just screwing up our environment, the type of leaders that we elect and things like that. So there's this weird thing that schools teaches us, that discipline is just demanded downwards, not upward. When authority figures lose emotional control, it's justified. So you might have just seen some viral clips recently of a couple of ministers when some were questioned about water issues and some were just laughing on how grape is this natural thing. One should enjoy it and things like that. So you see how different it is. Let's say if it was a beer bicep thing, how the entire country just got on him, but now there's no mob justification or cultural thing and those sorts of things for these people. Anyhow, when authority figure does this, even from a school setting, where teachers are messed up and things like that, they lose their emotional control. It's all justified. But when students do the same, it's punished. The lesson learned here isn't self-control. It's submission to hierarchy, submission to idiot teachers, idiot leaders, and things like that. And then how this ends up in real life. A weird sort of social ranking is created. Bullying is often justified and conditioned in a lot of people. So see, school is that weird place where social hierarchy is first experienced. Students are judged not just on academics, but on their confidence, the type of dominance they project on a lot of other fields, a sort of social protection if they play their cards right. But a lot of bullying also thrives in these sorts of environment. Often it's usually ignored until it becomes way too inconvenient, wherein there are news leaks and things like that. Let's say if you are not so bright student trying to improve in whatever facet of life you are. I'm just taking an example. Let's say earlier you were bullied. If you go to your teachers thinking they'll give you justice and all of that, you're just dismissed. But the moment you're trying to improve, you see that those same teachers just pound at you vehemently that why you're trying to improve. And if the dynamics change, if you also start asserting your own power in a weird way, then you see how the teacher would then have this weird sense of morality that he would want to enforce upon you. So these sorts of weird realities exist, but like from this social ranking and bullying thing, the silent lesson that a child learns is always align with power, stay invisible, or become a target in the eyes of, let's say, the common public, which in this case is that schooling class. So these patterns just don't vanish after school. They simply migrate to workplace, to society at large. And this sort of fake merit and the worship of marks, I don't know for what reason. So we are told that marks represent a sort of weird merit. In reality, they just measure short-term memory, compliance under pressure, and performance in like these are artificial conditions. Marks become a substitute for real ability, competence, and a lot of people attach their self-worth to these marks. But you might have seen that outside institutions, these marks almost mean nothing in real life. A lot of weird realities exist wherein the people who are the least competent from a mark perspective are just dominating in real life in a lot of facets in life. And then due to all of this, seen that a lot of people just waste their most valuable years. The irony is painful. The years of highest curiosity, energy, and let's say sort of adaptability are spent on standing still, sitting still, memorizing outdated information which just keeps on changing every 10-20 years, and waiting for permissions to just be your own self instead of learning how the world actually works. Student learns how to endure these brutal punishment systems for years on end. Now if I come to the real world, you see that it just rewards competence, not obedience. But we, for some weird reason, are just wired the other way. Reality is brutal, but it just shows you the way. Schools are taught that there's this whole lala, fairness land, and things like that. The world in general rewards people who can do things, who can think clearly, who take responsibility, and not those who follow outdated rules the longest and keep on being exploited. So you see, competence just compounds because there's a very predominant thing in the capitalistic world that people make money from money, but you see how obedience, it just plateaus. People are just expected to be obedient. So now what can you practically do as a person? So please first of all understand that it's more about becoming holistically developed in all sorts of areas, not, let's say, following what your teachers tell you to, because they're just employed there to make you teach the subject material, not tell you about life in general. Some practical insights would be just chasing skills instead of validation from an idiot, whether it's your authority or whatnot, or the people around you, because skills just pay you in the long term. Validation is a very weird short term metric. And even the idea with studies, I think the attitude should be that even if you want to study, the idea should be to develop understanding, not just build credentials, genuine understanding. That how can I practically apply it in my life? Because a lot of basic study is needed to, let's say, sometimes shine in certain places. I wouldn't just say that completely throw out the education, but probably just understanding that what's its real world implication and just attaching that much importance. Because on the other hand, it's also true that a lot of people who chase understanding also end up shining, because studies, if done the correct way, teach you the importance of hard work and things like that. But I think the idea here is more from how it harms your self-esteem and things like that. So I was just covering that aspect of the schooling system in my video, which brings me to one more practical skill, that developing emotional resilience and self-trust is of utmost importance. Because if you start attaching your identity to authority approving you, you will be in a wreck. But if you just start detaching your identity from authority approval, that would make a lot of sense. Sometimes marks can open door, maybe certain good environments and things like that. But from a long-term perspective, it's just your competence that decides how long you'll just flourish in a lot of real-world systems that exist in the world. So maybe schools can teach you to survive within systems, but often those systems are very repressive in their nature, killing individuality and creativity on a lot of levels. I think life rewards people who eventually outgrow them and start owning systems. So in my next video, I'll talk about, there's a book called The Millionaire Fast Lane by MJ DeMarco. So I'll just cover certain aspects from that, but I think the idea is to just build and own systems for your own freedom from a long-term perspective, and not outsourcing your thinking through things for your own self, seeing how reality works and then just strategically adjusting. Because once you start, let's say if I use this word, taking the red pill more vehemently, then a lot of reality just starts dissolving and you just start getting real world perspective. But anyhow, that was a video on the schooling system and just in general some insights around that. Let me know what you feel about it. Probably in the next video I'll go a lot deeper on a lot of other things. But until then, you stay awesome. This is Debu Ki Dastak from Debu Ki Dastak signing off. Cheers. Bye.